As we've been talking to different people in Lansing about their memories of growing up in the city, one thing that people always reminisce about is their time in high school. And so we decided it would be fun to do an exhibit that looks back at some of the fun things from high school. Not the math tests, but going to prom, sporting events, the clubs you belonged to, playing in the marching band, your yearbooks, going back and reading who signed them and what exactly they said about you. So we wanted to take a nostalgic look back at Lansing's different high schools. And we have 12 different high schools that we're talking about, both public and private. Now Lansing has had other high schools over the years, some very, very small private ones, but these are the 12 major high schools that have been in Lansing. So there's Central High School, which when it was established was just Lansing High School because it was the only one. Then there's Eastern High School. Sexton came next. Then there was Everett, which was incorporated into the Lansing school system when the city expanded. And then the last public school is Harry Hill, which only existed for about 10 years as an actual high school. Also on the public side is the Michigan School for the Blind, which granted diplomas for many, many years. Then on the private side, there's St. Mary's, Resurrection, O'Rafferty, Gabriels, Lansing Christian, and Lansing Catholic. A few of the items that we have are part of our collection, but many of them are on loan from people in the community. These are things that people have had in their tucked underneath their bed, in their trunks, cedar chests, and basements. These are things that meant enough to people that they've kept them for 30, 40 years, and they were gracious enough to share them with us. The exhibit that we have on display right now has objects from the early 20th century up until just a couple of years ago. One of our newest pieces is a Quiz Bowl trophy that was actually won by Everett High School's Quiz Bowl team in 2011. One of our older objects I actually have behind me, if you'd like me to pull it out. It's a football from Lansing High School. This is on loan to us from the Lansing Sports Hall of Fame. This is actually a 1920 high school state championship football. And if you look, you will see it's actually signed by all the different players and the coaches and so on. It's really a neat object. And again, this is something that the Lansing Sports Hall of Fame owns that they were gracious enough to lend us. One of my favorite objects is this prom dress that's right here. This prom dress was made to wear to the January prom, because this was back when we still had January classes, at Sexton in 1955. Nancy Byerhelm is the woman who made it, actually made a fabric purchased at Knapp's department store downtown. And she made this to wear to her senior prom. Her date, who you can actually see in this picture right up here, Jack would actually propose to her eventually, not at prom that night, but a bit later on, and they have now been married for over 50 years, actually. And this was a dress that she kept, hoping that she would have a daughter who might wear it someday, or a granddaughter. Well, as luck has had it, she has sons and grandsons. But still, since 1955, she has kept this dress. And what amazes me is just how in style it is today. I mean, I can see someone very easily wearing this to prom now, actually. We also have a prom dress back here from 1988 that belonged to an Everett High School grad, Ann Wilson. And she told me this fantastic story. There are actually pockets in this dress, and her parents gave her 2 dimes to put in her pocket before she left for prom, with the idea that just in case she and her date had any trouble that evening, she'd have money to call home. Now there's a story that many of us can relate to, but is still very much a sign of the times, because who uses a payphone today? Dance cards that were handed out at different school events, different junior and senior class proms and so on. And there's one from the 1960s, of course, that's called Utopian Splendor, which was the name of prom that year. And there's this fantastic poem in it that I think just really captures the essence of all the problems and anxiety of prom night. It says, "He worries, will she like them, these flowers that I bought? She wonders, will he like my dress, or have I shopped for naught? He ponders, what impression will I make upon her folks? She's praying, please, Dad, spare the boy your sage advice and jokes. He's nervous. Am I early, or am I too late? She's doubtful. Shall I go down now, or should I make 'em wait? They're off, the prom awaits them. They'll talk and laugh and dance. An evening to remember, utopian romance." Stepping over here, this section has a lot of items from different high school bands over the years. It seems that our membership, we have an extraordinarily large membership that also belong to the band, which maybe says something about historians. Now, some of these objects are actually in our permanent collection, such as the 2 Sexton band uniforms that you'll see hanging here on the wall. We also have a uniform from Eastern. Of course, want to keep all things equal as much as possible. It was interesting how many people, as they were reminiscing, would talk about that East Side, West Side rivalry. And we have some hats as well. This is actually the drum major hat that goes with the Eastern uniform. And then we also have a drum major majorette uniform that the girls would have worn. This is from, I believe it's 1990 is the date on this. And you can actually see she still has her medals that she kept on it from some of her different band competitions that she was in over the years. We also have a couple cheerleading items, including this wonderful photograph. This is a cheerleader, that's Sue, again from the 1950s. And as you take a look at the image, that actually was in this scrapbook. This is a scrapbook that she has kept over all the years that has all sorts of items in it from when she was in high school, including class play programs, the commencement ticket for her graduation in 1957, the winter sports roundup program. And Sue is an example of a local girl who stayed in the area, Sue Beekman, of the Beekman family, went on to Michigan State, won some scholarships, and earned her bachelor's degree there. And she kept a chronology of all of this in this yearbook, or excuse me, in the scrapbook, which includes her graduation invitation, all the name cards from her friends, graduation cards that she received from people. It's just a really wonderful snapshot of that time. This table has different sports-related items with it. Of course, when everyone thinks of Lansing sports, the first thing most of us think of is Magic Johnson. And we do have actually a plaque that commemorates the 1977 state championship that Everett won when he played for the Vikings. We also learned, though, as we were going back, that Everett, which has a very rich sports tradition, their first state championship they won was for wrestling in 1965. And so we have the plaque that is in the Greater Lansing Sports Hall of Fame for that, and also this is actually the trophy that they won for that championship, and that was such a big deal for them, of course. We also have some uniforms, as you'll see up on the wall, and a few pieces that shows what some Lansing athletes did later on, including this piece, which is an extraordinary item, an actual Olympic jacket that was worn by an Eastern High School graduate, Kevin Jackson, who wore this when he participated in the 1992 Olympics in Barcelona, Spain. He actually won a gold medal there for freestyle wrestling. And it's interesting because I think most of us, when we think of Lansing sports, don't necessarily think of wrestling, but we really have a rich tradition of that and of fantastic athletes coming out from this very city. Another item that's interesting is the Capitol Caravan Club. This is actually a boxer's robe. And the Caravan Club was a local boxing organization, and there were many local boxers who were very involved with the sport at the time. I've heard stories of different families with young men who would participate, and one gentleman who was actually involved was Mr. Letts from the Letts family, was involved with boxing in the, I think it was the 1950s. Over here we have some items that talk about putting together the yearbook and school newspapers. It amazes me how many people still have copies of their old school newspapers after all these years. We have the Easterner, which is of course the Quaker publication from Eastern High School. We also have copies of the Zodiac, which is the paper at Sexton. And we have many, many yearbooks as well. In fact, when we opened the exhibit in November, the first evening people came in, this room was just buzzing and everyone was picking up the yearbooks and flipping through them. And so many people were so excited to see their parents, their aunts and uncles, and we had a couple people who even found their grandparents in the yearbooks. And they were learning things about their grandparents they had never known. One young woman picked up a yearbook, flipped through, and discovered that her grandfather had actually been on the yearbook staff and had helped put that very publication together that she was holding holding in her hands. This is an object from the early 1930s, actually. And she got a little misty-eyed when she saw it because she had no idea her grandfather had been gone for many years, but suddenly he was alive again in that yearbook that she was holding. And that was something that she could then turn around and share with her daughter, who she brought with her. This is a letter sweater from Sexton. You can see the Sexton Big Red here that was used at the time from 1946, as you can see over here. This belonged to a young man named Baldwin Carr. He went by Ron, that was his nickname, who graduated from Sexton in 46. And he went on actually to serve in the Army during Korea. And during Korea, he lost his life. He was officially MIA, never came home. But this letter sweater was something that his family has treasured ever since, and they were gracious enough to loan it to us for this exhibit. And if you take a look right here, you can actually see an image of him wearing it. He is on a camping trip up north with some of his classmates that graduated the same year. As we were looking through the yearbooks, this particular oracle, which is from 1936 from Central High School, brought to mind a story that is definitely worth telling from Lansing's African American community. Right here on the page you will see a picture of William Horton Thompson, who was a graduate of Central High School and actually is the son of William Horton, who was the very first African American graduate from Michigan State University, which at the time was Michigan State College. Horton would go on a few years later to serve in the military during World War II, and he was actually part of the elite group of airmen known as the Tuskegee Airmen, which of course was an all-black group of soldiers that just performed with distinction throughout the war. And again, we all have heard of the Tuskegee Airmen, we've all heard their story, but how many of us realized that they were Tuskegee Airmen from Lansing, Michigan? This table is a combination of two different clubs from high school. We have Quiz Bowl, which is represented by the Everett trophy that they won with the WKR Quizbusters program in 2011. That is a very, very strong Quiz Bowl program that has really done a great service for the community. And because the students who participate in this have been able to win these championships, they've actually been able to earn money for themselves to go on in the form of scholarships to Michigan State, which shows that these clubs are more than just social organizations. It's a way to really help the students advance. Also, we have some objects from different plays over the years. Many people have reminisced about the drama clubs they belonged to and the class plays they would perform. And we have some objects from Eastern. We have a lovely red feathered hat worn by Dolly in their production of Hello, Dolly a few years ago. And if anyone is familiar with the show Little Shop of Horrors, we have the smallest version of the plant, Audrey 2, that you will see here. We temporarily looked at doing the largest version of this, but then realizing it's about 9 feet tall and actually requires a human body to stand within it to make it move, decided that was probably not the best thing. Lansing has a long tradition, though, of encouraging drama and the arts. This image right here shows a production at Eastern High School of A Midsummer Night's Dream from the very early 20th century. And I love just all the beautiful costumes, all the young ladies dressed as fairies. It must have been a wonderful show. Now, the School for the Blind, when it was originally established in the 19th century, was located in Flint with the School for the Deaf, as it is today. But in the 1880s, it was decided that it would be appropriate to separate it and move it to Lansing. So they came, they built a campus down today is what we consider in the Old Town area. And over the years, it serviced many, many different blind students from across the state. And it was a full boarding school, unlike any of the other schools we've been talking about. So students would actually live on campus in different cottages. And we have a couple examples here of different tools they would have had on the campus made available to them. This is actually a Braille typewriter that students would use to take notes during class so they could go back and review the material. And they, of course, also had time for leisure. So here we have a Braille Scrabble board. And you have the tiles that have the Braille for each letter on them. And then the board itself has Braille on it for the double, triple letter scores and so on. A very unique piece. Of course, the most famous graduate of the School for the Blind is Stevie Wonder, who graduated in the 1960s, and you can actually see an image of him here with his mother when he graduated. As we were putting together this exhibit, we wanted to make sure that we were telling not only the stories of Lansing's big public schools, but also the private schools, which have really been important to many different community groups in Lansing. And the largest system of private schools that the city has had are the Catholic schools. Now, there have been different Catholic high schools connected with different parishes. St. Mary's School was the first established, as that was the first Catholic parish in the area. Then when the Resurrection Parish was established in the 1920s, they established a school there as well. And for many years, that school actually went all the way through high school. And one of our members is an alumni, and he actually loaned us this wonderful band uniform that he wore when he played in the band at Resurrection in the early 1960s. And one of the extraordinary things that I noticed as I was working with this uniform is how tiny it was. This is a very, very small mannequin that we have this on, and we couldn't even get the jacket to button. Just the little stories that come through as you're working with these objects reveal so much about ourselves, even in the sense of how our physical bodies have changed over the years. Now, this particular member is quite the saver, and not only does he have his old band uniform and his band hat, which has been retooled with duct tape thanks to his grandchildren, he even has a report card that he kept. He was actually in school during the transition from when Resurrection High School closed and Gabriels High School opened. Now, Gabriels opened in the 1960s, and Gabriels High School is used as the current Lansing Catholic Central Building. And it's a structure that many of us are familiar with. And when they transitioned from Resurrection to Gabriels, they took the school colors, green and white, and just transitioned them over. And they also took the school mascot, which was the Shamrocks, and moved that as well. Something similar happened with the transition from St. Mary's to O'Rafferty High School. And we have a few pieces over here, including some yearbooks. We actually have a dedication program from when O'Rafferty opened in May of 1964. St. Mary's High School was initially founded as an elementary school, and as the children got older, they just kept adding grades on, eventually until it went all the way through 12th grade. In fact, we actually have a diploma from St. Mary's High School right here. This belongs to a local judge, Charles Fleece, who loaned it to us for the exhibit. When St. Mary's closed in 1964, the students were transitioned over to O'Rafferty. And you can see some objects here. Like St. Mary's, the O'Rafferty colors were blue and white. The only difference was they did change their mascot. St. Mary's had been called the Big Blues, a reference to the fact that blue is a color associated with the Virgin Mary. When they became O'Rafferty, though, they decided to become the O'Rafferty Raiders. The two large private high schools that exist in Lansing today that are faith-based are Lansing Catholic School and Lansing Christian School, which is located way out on the south end at this point. And we grouped some of their objects together here. We have some graduation programs, we have a diploma from Lansing Christian School, and we also have a basketball jersey. Lansing Christian and Lansing Catholic both have really excelled in sports over the years, and Lansing Christian actually won I believe it's a Class D girls state basketball championship just a couple years ago. And it really shows how these schools offer so much to their students. And that's one advantage of living in a city the size of Lansing. These are not tiny schools that can only provide the bare basics. Lansing schools, public or private, have a rich history of offering their students so many different opportunities, whether it's academically, whether it's playing sports, whether it's excelling in the arts. And that's something that our community has benefited so much from. And we are so pleased that so many people were willing to share their own stories and their own history with us, and therefore let us share it with the community, because that's what this is all about. This is all about remembering the good times of Lansing, reflecting on the stories of what has made Lansing what it is today, and sharing those stories with the community and opening up a discussion about how we can learn from that past and how that can inform the way we live and learn in this city today. We would love to be able to have a permanent exhibit like this, or even larger, that tells the story not only of Lansing schools, but other special things about Lansing. What we've eaten in Lansing over the years, which is what we'll be talking about with our next exhibit. Where we worship, where we work, what we do with our spare time, where do we like to play on Friday evenings and on those free Saturdays. Our hope is to eventually grow these little pop-up exhibits that come and go into a full-scale museum that people can come and visit anytime they'd like to. Thank you so much for visiting our schools exhibit with us today. We are planning many more exhibits. Our next exhibit, which will open May 30th, is called Lansing Eats, and will incorporate objects from many different Lansing restaurants, locally produced cookbooks. We have items from Martha Dixon's cooking show. We're looking for stories about how we have cooked, what we have eaten over Lansing. If you have any objects along that line, or any objects from Lansing's history in general, we would love to hear from you. Our website is lansinghistory.org. You can go there, click on the Donate to Our Collection website, and learn about what sorts of things we are hoping to collect. Not only objects from Lansing's eating history and our school history, objects from different businesses that have made a home in Lansing, objects from government, objects from celebrations that our capital city has hosted, objects from different places of worship, different clubs that people have belonged to over the years. You can help us share the stories of Lansing's history by sharing your objects and stories with us. So please check us out at lansinghistory.org. I am very interested in vintage fashion, so the jacket I am wearing is a reproduction of a 1940s jacket, actually, that I made myself. I have jewelry from the 1960s. This is Coro brand jewelry, which was very popular in the late 50s, early 60s, very Mad Men. And the earrings match, and then the hat is vintage as well. I think from the early 60s. It was a gift from a friend.